Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. T here yet again, and un momento. Alright, that's actually the only Spanish I know. I think that was Spanish. So, sorry, more lighting. I had to do more lighting. Now I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I just turn the light on and, redo the video with the light on? Well, I plead the fifth, so I don't have to answer that. And because I forgot. So, we are here today with our Fifth Amendment. Now I know you like all the other words and stuff, because our Fifth Amendment, and I'm going to jump right in, our Fifth Amendment has to do with double jeopardy, okay? Eminent domain, which is basically the government taking your property from you legally. Now, just compensation, we'll get into that. Pleading the fifth, court cases like Miranda, things like that. You like my little Jeopardy game? So, the Fifth Amendment doesn't have one set thing. It's not like the First Amendment, it has 5 different things, but we broke them up, and each one had their own. The Second Amendment, guns. Third Amendment, quartering troops. Fourth Amendment, warrants, and then the warrants have to do, or search and seizure, but the search and seizures have to do with warrants, so they all kind of come together. The Fifth Amendment, while all the things that have to do with the Fifth Amendment kind of tie in with each other, there's a lot of different things in the Fifth Amendment. I could have broken the Fifth Amendment into several videos, but I'm not, and I'm going to get it all in one video. And don't worry, it's going to go by fast. So, what does the Fifth Amendment protect? So, before I get to the obvious things like I plead the fifth, which is probably the most, known thing, and, the one thing that all Americans know about the legal system is I plead the fifth. Or at least they should, because that's probably one of your biggest rights when you get arrested. It actually is your biggest right when you get arrested. So, before I get into that, I'm going to get kind of some of these other things out of the way. So, what does the Fifth Amendment protect? The very first thing the Fifth Amendment protects, in order of the way it appears in the Constitution or the Amendment, is you cannot be charged with a crime without basically that crime being heard by a grand jury. Now, what is a grand jury? A grand jury, there's 2 types of juries, okay? There's a grand jury and a regular jury, or a petite jury. That's the official term, and I'm just going to call it a regular jury. A grand jury, okay, is 12 to 23 people. Okay? Most of the time they use 23, but they can use anywhere from 12 to 23 people. A regular jury or a petite jury is 6 to 12 people. Now, the difference, a regular jury, the one that you probably probably know of the most, or the one you see the most in, like Criminal Minds and things like that, and all those lawyer shows where, they give the verdict of guilty and stuff like that. That jury is basically, that's what they do. They give a verdict of guilty. They say whether the person is guilty or innocent. They hear the case, they hear both sides bicker and argue, the judge throws some things out there, and then the small jury, the regular jury, says whether they're guilty or not. The grand jury, which is protected by the Fifth Amendment, that is basically the jury, that's the beforehand. That jury comes into play before, and that jury basically looks at all the evidence. I mean everything. Okay, even the stuff that the regular jury is never going to see. So whether it be, testimonies from people that they, they got the testimonies by breaking the Fifth Amendment, whether they captured things from a house or someone without using a warrant, things like that. The grand jury sees all of it. And they decide, first off, they decide what they are and are not allowed to use in the actual court case when the regular jury sees it. But they also determine whether there even is a case, okay? Because there's no point in bringing a criminal case to trial if there is no case. If someone is trying to accuse someone else of a crime and, they're just pulling this smoke out from nowhere and there really is no case to even do, there's no point in wasting a judge's time to actually hear the case and wasting another jury's time to come in and say guilty or not guilty. So that's what a grand jury is. Now, kind of getting into some of the other things before I get into I plead the fifth is, and side thing on the grand jury, the military doesn't count. If you are on active duty, the military has a whole nother thing. And it actually specifically says that in the Fifth Amendment. The military gets to do their own thing. Now, if you are a soldier, but you're on leave, or you're in a civilian, or you're not physically representing the U.S. Army or the U.S. military at that point, then you're considered a civilian, and then you get the grand jury. Okay? I'll do a Mobile America video on that later. The next thing, actually I'm kind of skipping around a little, is eminent domain, okay? Like I said, I'm not going in order anymore in the Fifth Amendment. Another thing that the Fifth Amendment protects is your property. Now, eminent domain is basically, I did a Mobile America video on this, it basically means the government can take your property without your permission, but here's the thing, and it specifically says this in the Fifth Amendment, they have to compensate you. Okay? They can't just come in and take your stuff. If you haven't committed a crime. Okay? If you have not committed a crime, the government can come in and still take your property if they justly compensate you. Now, what is just compensation? I get in this in my Mobile America video. Now, just compensation doesn't mean pennies on the dollar. If you have a house that's worth $250,000, they're not going to give you $20,000 for the house. However, on the flip side of that, they're not going to give you your asking price. So if you have a house worth $250,000, they're not going to come in, the government's not going to come in and give you $500,000 or $1 million if that's what you're asking for. They're going to give you what the property is worth. And the government can come in and do that and then give it to private entities. And the reason for this is, I gave an example in my Mobile America video, but let's say you want to build like a baseball park or something, okay? That baseball park, once built, and that baseball team is going to generate a lot of money for the local economy. So it's going to be good for the general people. It's going to it's going to make jobs, going to bring in money to the state or the county or whatever. That's good for the general population. So the government can come in and take your land if they need it to build that ballpark. And that's the example I used in Mobile America. Another thing is, I kind of touched on this, is nothing, your life, liberty, and property cannot be taken without due process. Now, eminent domain aside. Now, this is where they just come in and take it. Not compensating you, I mean they physically just take it. Okay? You cannot have anything of yours just taken without, just compensation, or in the case of liberty and life, without due process. This is the basic behind the death penalty. Okay? The Supreme Court has ruled that using the Fifth Amendment, or they used other laws too, but the Fifth Amendment was the big one, is the death penalty is legal. Okay? However, a lot of people, fight using the Eighth Amendment or the Seventh. I get them mixed up. Cruel and unusual punishment, and the Supreme Court's like, no. Under the Fifth Amendment, if you are charged with a crime, you can have your life taken from you under, due process. And due process basically just means, you went through courts and, they found that you broke a law, that kind of thing. You can have your life taken from you under, whether it be the most number one thing nowadays is lethal injection, things like that. That is legal under the Fifth Amendment if you committed a crime. Government agencies can't just come in and grab you, take you in the middle of the night, and kill you that way. They have to have due process. A court, a grand jury, a regular jury, a conviction of guilty, all those things. But they can do it if they follow due process. Now, getting into the meat of the Fifth Amendment, the biggest, most number one thing, or two biggest things the number one that the Fifth Amendment covers is double jeopardy and I pleading the Fifth. So, the final two things under the Fifth Amendment is you, as an American citizen, cannot be held for the same crime twice. So, if you commit a crime, okay, and you go to court and they find you not guilty, you can, before you even walk out of that courthouse, you can stand up and say, oh yeah, I did it, and even show proof, you take out your phone or something, and show proof that you did it, and you cannot be charged for it, because you have already gone through court, and they've already found you not guilty. Now, a side note on that, though, and this is any crime. There was a movie out once that this woman killed her husband, went to court for it, they found her not guilty, or they found her guilty, she served her time, and then it comes to find out her husband was still alive. There was nothing, under the Fifth Amendment, there was nothing stopping her from killing her husband in front of a judge, a cop, and a lawyer. And there was nothing they could have done, because she already served time for the crime of killing her husband. Here's the thing, though. Two things on that. First off, if you, commit a crime, let's say you commit a burglary, okay? While the burglary is one overarching crime, you can be charged with, theft. And if you hurt someone, if you shoot someone who's there, you can also be charged for the murder or the hurting someone. So you could be charged in one court case for what you stole, and you could be charged in another court case for the person you hurt. Even though it's still all under that same one crime of the burglary or the breaking and entering, you could still be charged in two separate areas. The other thing behind that is let's say, same thing, I'll use the same example. You rob a convenience store. Okay, and they find you not guilty for robbing the convenience store, or they even do find you guilty and you serve your time. You can't go back and re-rob that convenience store a second time and say, oh, double jeopardy, because it's two separate crimes. It's two things. Now, like I said, the woman killing her husband, it's the same guy. She was charged for killing that specific man and did her time. That's why she could go and actually kill him. But if you go and, like, you can't be like, oh, well, I already, you can't be charged with killing someone, found not guilty, and then go and kill another person. Two separate crimes. The very final thing on the Fifth Amendment that I want to get to before the video I go too over is I plead the Fifth. You as an American citizen have the right to not incriminate yourself in court or in anywhere. And what that means is you do not have to say a word against yourself. Okay? Now, one thing before I go this, that does not protect you incriminating someone else. So if you're asked a question about someone else, it's mainly only in a courtroom that this is in. But if you're asked a question about someone else, you can't say I plead the Fifth protecting the other person. Okay? If you're not under arrest or if you're not in a court situation, you can still say I don't want to answer that. But if you're in a court situation, you have to answer. However, if you're answering a question about yourself, you don't have to answer. And there was a court case on this, Miranda v. Arizona, 1966, and that has the famous Miranda law or the Miranda case. Okay, what Miranda is you have to have, there's four things. For a cop to be able to question you and use that statement in court, they have to have four things. They have to they have to tell you that you have the right to remain silent. They have to tell you anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. They have to say that you have a right to an attorney. And they have to say that if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. They have to say all four of those things at least. They can add on, but they have to say those things. If they do not say all four of those things, if they do not tell you about your rights to remain silent, anything you say, or pretty much anything you, actually yes, anything you say after they take you into custody and interrogate you, is that they can't use it. Okay? Now, one final thing before I go on that. If you are not in custody, if you're just standing there on the side of the road talking to a cop, they don't have to say anything. They don't have to tell you your right to remain silent. Okay? So don't think that you can just walk up to a cop and start spilling all this stuff to him and he can't use any of it against you just because he didn't give you your Miranda rights. He can use it because he hasn't arrested you yet. And the last thing before I go, ladies and gentlemen, is the one thing that people get confused with is, they're like, oh, I plead the Fifth and think that's okay. There have been times where some cops and some judges said that's not enough. You have to physically say, I invoke my right to remain silent. Otherwise, there's situations where judges won't take your I plead the Fifth. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I went really far over on the Fifth Amendment, but there was a lot to get to. The Sixth Amendment, I might go a little over, but Seventh Amendment on, I promise you I will stay under my 10 minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay beautiful, Americans. I know you all love me. That's why you keep watching these videos. And go watch Mobile America. Peace.